Good evening, councillors, staff, members of the public. Please be upstanding for Deputy Mayor Bronwyn Knife.
Good evening. I will declare the meeting open at 6:30 p.m. and I will invite Councillor Lindsay Miles to read the Acknowledgement of Country, please.
Nanjerapin Wajak Nunga Bujak Yakin Nidja Bilya Bardak. I'm honoured to be standing on Wajak Nunga country on the banks of the Swan River. Nankadich Nunga Mort Kinkadak Nidja Wajak Nunga Buja. Nankadich Nidja Nunga Burdia Kora Yeye Borda. Balapin Mordich Nunga Kadajin Mort Webuja Yeye. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and respect past, present and emerging leaders, their continuing cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land, which continues to be important today. Nangyunga Balapin Nunga Burdia Wemort Nijabuja. I thank them for the contribution made to the life in the town of Victoria Park and to this region.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Please be seated, everyone. Item 2, announcements from the presiding member. 2.1, recording and live streaming of proceedings. In accordance with Regulation 14I of the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996, this meeting is being audio and video recorded and live streamed on the town's website. Under Clause 39(1) of the Meeting Procedures Local Law 2019, I do not give permission for any other person to record the proceedings of this meeting. By being present at this meeting, members of the public consent to the possibility that their image and voice may be live streamed to public. Recordings are also made available on the town's website following the meeting. 2.2, public question time and public statement time. There are guidelines that need to be adhered to in our council meetings, and during question and statement time, people speaking are not to personalise any questions or statements about elected members or staff or use any possible defamatory remarks. In accordance with Clause 40 of the Town of Victoria Park Meeting Procedures Local Law 2019, a person addressing the council shall extend due courtesy and respect to the council and the processes under which it operates, and so shall comply with any direction by the presiding member. A person present at or observing a meeting shall not create a disturbance at the meeting by interrupting or interfering with the proceedings, whether by expressing approval or dissent, by conversing or by any other means. When the presiding member speaks during public question time or public statement time, any person then speaking is to immediately stop, and every person present is to preserve strict silence so that the presiding member may be heard without interruption. We do have a limit of 3 questions per person and 2 minutes per statement. 2.3, no adverse reflection. In accordance with Clause 56 of the Town of Victoria Park Meeting Procedures Local Law 2019, both elected members and the public when speaking are not to reflect adversely on the character or actions of elected members or employees. 2.4, Town of Victoria Park Meeting Procedures Local Law 2019. All meetings of the council, committees and the electors are to be conducted in accordance with the Act, the regulations and the Town of Victoria Park Meeting Procedures Local Law 2019. 2.5, attendance in council by electronic means. In accordance with section 5.34 of the Local Government Act 1995, as Deputy Mayor, I will be acting as the presiding member at tonight's ordinary council meeting. As the presiding member and pursuant to Regulation 14C2B of the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996, I also authorise Councillor Daniel Minson to attend the ordinary council meeting to be held on 17 June 2025 by the approved electronic means of MS Teams, as I'm satisfied that Councillor Minson will be in a suitable location from which to attend the meeting, and the equipment that the member intends to use to attend the meeting is suitable for the member to be able to effectively engage in deliberations and communications during the meeting in accordance with Regulation 14C5 of the regulations. Pursuant to Regulation 14CA5 of the regulations, Councillor Minson has declared that he can maintain confidentiality during the meeting or any closed part of the meeting as the case requires. And thank you, Councillor Minson, for making the time to join us online tonight. Item 3, attendance. We have all elected members in attendance with the exception of the Mayor, Karen Vernon, who is an approved leave of absence tonight. And as previously mentioned, Councillor Daniel Minson is joining us online. We also have a large number of the town staff present this evening, led by our Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Carl Askew, as well as some guests. Item 4, declarations of interest. Mr. CEO, do we have any declarations of interest, please?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Item 11.3, Councillor Crozer and impartiality interest. I have discussed this item with members of the community. Item 12.1, Councillor Crozer, impartiality. I have discussed this item with members of the community. Item 12.1, Councillor Devereux, impartiality. I have discussed this with members of the community and their concerns about losing sumps that provide biodiversity space to development. Item 12.1, Councillor Minson, impartiality. I have had discussions with members of the community about this item, particularly the principal petitioner for the sumps and interface issues. Item 12.2, Councillor Crozer, impartiality. I have discussed this item with members of the community. Item 12.2, Councillor Devereux, impartiality. I have received information from Urbis about the traffic conditions. Item 13.1, Councillor Crozer, impartiality. One of the applicants has asked me about the EOI process. Item 13.2, Councillor Crozer, impartiality. I have discussed this item with members of the community. And item 14.3, Councillor Crozer, impartiality. I have discussed this item with affected residents.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Are there any other elected members who would like to declare an interest this evening? Great, thank you very much. Item 5, public question time. 5.1, response to previous public questions taken on notice at the ordinary council meeting from the 20th of May are published in tonight's agenda. 5.2, public question time. Before we move to the public questions from the gallery, we have had questions pre-submitted from 2 community members with a request that I read these out and they be answered tonight at the meeting. So I will be reading these out on behalf of our community members, and these are the community members' direct words. They are not my words. So the first questions are from Graham Firstat. First question, one of the auditor's findings in the 2022-2023 financial year was that the purchase orders were routinely issued after invoices were received. The auditor identified 992 occurrences totalling $10.9 million. For the current financial year, what is the total number and value of purchase orders issued after invoices were received between 1 July 2024 and 31 May 2025? And I'll address that question to the Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Auld.
The auditor's findings for 24-25 are not yet finalised and the report's not yet been released.
So will you take that on notice and provide an answer to Mr. First?
I do not have an answer because the report's not finalised or released.
Okay, thank you. Question 2, what is the 2024-25 budget allocation for elected members' catering and refreshments, and how much has been expended to date? I'll address that also to Mr. Auld.
Total budget for the year $27,000. Year to date, or to the 31st of May, $9,870.30.
Thank you very much. And the third question, in February, the town's credit card expenses included a payment of $1,100 to Ingrid for performing a Welcome to Country. The town has advised that this was for an International Women's Day event it hosted. How long did Ingrid's performance last at that event? And I'll address that question to the Chief Community Planner, Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ife. The Welcome to Country was scheduled for a maximum duration of 15 minutes at the event. However, due to illness, it did not take place. The town has been refunded that amount.
Thank you very much, Mr. Doy. The next questions are from a community member called Alex Ford, and yet again these were pre-submitted, and I will be reading them out word for word. It's my understanding that these relate to the Albany Highway Precinct Structure Plan. The first question, can Council consider an amendment tonight to reclassify 18 Oswald Street as CW4 to address an inconsistency? I'm going to ask Ms Ward if she can answer that question. Oh, Mr Doy, I apologise.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ife. Council can, at its prerogative, consider any matters related to the precinct structure plan. However, administration does not recommend this change. The structure plan identifies 18 Oswald Street within a CW3 sub-precinct to reflect its proximity to and provide transitioning to lower scale residential character areas, and responds to the intended streetscape character and amenity of Hordern Street.
Thank you very much. Question 2. Alternatively, will Council consider applying a site-specific overlay or variation via clause 1.4 or similar that permits equivalent bonus heights and plot ratios? Mr Doy.
Again, Council can, at its prerogative, consider any matters related to the PSP, but while the site is not designated CW4, Clause 1.4 of the Albany Highway Precinct Structure Plan enables variations where it can be demonstrated that the proposed variation satisfies the objectives of the sub-precinct plan, and where it can be demonstrated that any impacts on precinct character are appropriately managed. This allows flexibility for development proposals to demonstrate a context site response through detailed design without requiring a change to the sub-precinct designation.
Thank you, Mr Doy. And the third question, if not amended tonight, can we be assured that future proposals for bonus height at 18 Oswald Street will be looked on favourably given the site's context and configuration? Mr Doy.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. No. Determinations of future proposals will be assessed at the time of the application and will be made in response to built form design considerations and community benefit proposed. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We'll move on now to the community members in attendance who have registered that they would like to ask some questions. I will remind everybody that there is a limit of 3 questions per person. So those who may have more, I hope they've been furiously combining their questions into one. So I will first ask Nicole Sloan to come to the microphone. Nicole Sloan, if you could come to the microphone, please tell us your name and your suburb. Thank you.
Thank you. So my name's Nicole Sloan. I'm a resident of East Victoria Park. I have a question. It's a couple of integrated questions actually with some background, so I'll use the statement time to build that in.
Statement time is separate to question time. It's next. So
okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go with what I've got, and you just let me know if there's a point of order or something. So it's just related to the procurement policies of the town and whether there are any stipulations that ensure that the rates and taxes collected from residents and local businesses aren't spent in ways which inadvertently support violations of human rights and international law. And for some background to my question and to be specific, I'll refer to the current ongoing situation involving Israel and Palestine. Firstly, the assault since 2023 in Gaza, which has devolved into what the ICJ has found to be plausible genocide, with Amnesty International in agreement. And of which the Lancet Journal estimates a really high civilian death toll in the hundreds of thousands. And secondly, also the 77 years of what the UN has deemed to be illegal occupation of Palestinian land. So the UN Security Council Resolution 2334.
Sorry, Ms Sloan, we're quite aware of the context.
Amazing.
So we can put that question now if
amazing.
you'd like, yep.
So just with the government starting to act quite slowly and not yet proportionately, it just leaves me asking, along with other residents of town of Vic Park really, they've spoken to, in the name of human rights at a local level, what could be done. Because on a personal level, we're doing our best, and we are aware of also other local governments in New South Wales and New Zealand who have put forward some motions that have stipulations that are specific to this issue, which just mean that the money collected by the town isn't going towards this. Yeah.
Yep, I understand your question. I will address that to Mr Old to see if he has anything to offer. Thank you, Mr Old.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. So the town's procurement policy is publicly available on the website, so that will have the framework which which staff will use. In addition, every month all the transactions are tabled at council meeting as they are at this meeting. So members of the public can peruse that to see if there's something in there of concern. And thirdly, also our investments, for example, are also tabled in the financial report. I don't know what else I can add, but the policy is available on the website.
Thank you, Mr Old. Ms Sloan, did you have another question?
I guess them being on the website is good and something to look at, but my question is whether there is anything relevant there already that governs procurement.
To the best of my knowledge, there's nothing that makes specific reference to the particular points that you're raising at
Yep.
this stage.
Okay. I guess the question would just be, I don't know if it's putting the question on notice, or something to take away would be like what could be done in that direction.
I can answer that. If you are interested in raising this as an issue, then you're absolutely welcome to email elected members and let them know your views. And there may be an elected member who's interested in raising this as at a concept forum or as a notice of motion themselves.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for your questions. Our next questions are from Tim Young. If you could come to the microphone, please, and tell us your name and your suburb. Thank you.
Hello, Tim Young, East Victoria Park.
Please proceed.
Thank you. As of 2021, the town of Victoria Park was listed as a refugee, as a refugee welcome zone. Some of you might remember that we had the lovely big welcome sign that was displayed at the park centre. The Refugee Welcome Zone initiative began in June of 2002 as an initiative of the Refugee Council of Australia. And a refugee welcome zone is a local government area which has made a commitment in spirit to welcome refugees into the community, to uphold the human rights of refugees, to demonstrate the compassion for refugees, and to enhance cultural and religious diversity in the community. My question is, does the town of Victoria Park currently maintain its designation as a refugee welcome zone? If not, why not? And if so, what has the town done in the last 12 months to honour this commitment?
Mr. Doyle, Chief Community Planner, thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. As a new Chief Community Planner, I actually don't know. So I'm going to take that on notice and find out. But it does sound familiar. And maybe it's time for me to educate myself on a potential previous decision of council. So I'll take that on notice and come back.
To the best of my knowledge, we haven't got rid of it intentionally, and I've been around that whole time. So one would hope we still are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Well, I mean, if we can find out whether we are, and my understanding as well is that it doesn't technically expire, it is a commitment. So the remainder of the question is, what has the town done in the last 12 months to honour this commitment?
Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I'll take that on notice and provide a full answer. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions?
That's
No? All good. Thank you very much. Our next questions are from Vince Maxwell. If you could come forward and tell us your name and your suburb, please.
Vince Maxwell, Vic Park. Sorry. So I'm just referring to the capital expenses chart, which is on page 13 of the financial statements. Remember this little thing? And I just want to understand how this chart is constructed. So as an example, if you, in the financial statements on page 19, I don't know if you want to look it up, the 10th item in the Parks, Gardens and Reserves section is called Victoria Park Bowling Club Synthetic Bowling Green. And the first column shows $295,000. The second column shows $98,333. And the third column is blank, or it's just a line there. So in relation to the chart, I'm assuming the first column, 295, is part of the overall total of $60 million for the year. And the year-to-date budget, the second column, 98,333, is part of the blue shaded area on this chart. And if there was a number in the third column, that would form part of the red bar at the bottom here. Is my interpretation of that correct?
I'm going to address that question to our graphs expert, Mr. Old.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, I'm just looking on the agenda. What graph are you referring to again?
On page 13 of the financial statements, the bottom right-hand corner, it's called capital expenses.
Sorry, I was at the rate debtors one. So, if you just give me one moment. So obviously, I'll be closer to the microphone. So the green is obviously the total budget, and we phase that as we expect to do the works, but obviously reality kicks in and sometimes the timing is not as we expected. 23, 24, obviously orange is last year, and year-to-date actual is literally just actual what we spent to date. So it doesn't include the commitments column, which is purchase orders and perhaps contracts let.
I was specifically referring to one of the items in the capital works project and the 3 columns, and I'm just wondering how that relates to the different parts of the chart. So,
Mr Maxwell, could you tell us the reference in
yeah,
the...
so it's on page 19 of the financial statements,
Thank
and
you.
it's in the parks, gardens and reserves, the 10th, well, the example I use, you could use any of them, but I use the 10th one down, which is called Victoria Park Carlisle Bowling Club Synthetic Bowling Green. And the first 3 columns is what I was referring to.
So are you trying to understand how those first 3 columns are demonstrated in that graph that you've got in front of you?
Yes, so my understanding is the first column is the total for the year. So in that case, that 295 would form part of that. The second column, 98,000, would form part of the blue shaded area for that period. And the third column, well, there's 0 in that one, but the third column in all those amounts would total up to the orange or the red bar.
Mr Old, is that a correct assumption that Mr Maxwell has made?
Correct, as I'm trying to scroll between the different pages. Yes, that sounds correct.
Oh, okay. So does the second question is, does the cost associated with the preparation of the scope of works and design get allocated against each project, or is it accounted for somewhere else?
Mr Old?
Correct. So generally when you capitalise a project, any costs associated with constructing that are capitalised at some point. If a project is perhaps designed but not complete for whatever reason or put on hold, it may be held work in progress, which may be carried somewhere else. But by and large, that is correct. You'll be captured under capital expense.
Thank you. And your third question, Mr Maxwell?
So still on that same item, and I'm just using this one as an example, the Vic Park Carlisle Bowling Club Synthetic Bowling Green. The year-to-date actual column is blank. So, and this project was a carry forward from the last year, and the 295,000 was allocated back then. So given that there's been no apparent progress across 2 financial years, when does the town realistically expect to start this project?
We're going to ask that one to be addressed by Mr Doy, the Chief Community Planner.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ife, and thanks, Mr Maxwell, for the question. That particular project, the budget for the entire synthetic turf was provided and approved by council in the hope that it would be offset by 50% by a CSRFF grant. The first year we were unsuccessful in getting that grant from the Department of Local Government, Sports, Cultural and Industries. But we need the money in there to be able to make that application. We've made another application for funding, and we hope to find out over the coming weeks actually whether we were successful. We had intended to have spent money by now, which is what the $98,000 in the second column refers to, but we haven't heard whether we're successful in the grant to proceed with that project.
Thank you, Mr Maxwell. I hope that answers your question.
Okay. So, but no design work has been done on this at all, or nothing, other than applying for a grant? Okay.
Not at this stage.
Right.
Thank you, Mr Maxwell. Next on our list we have Neda Blackwood. If you could come to the microphone, please. Tell us your name and your suburb, and then you can launch straight into your questions.
Hello, my name is Neda Blackwood. We live in Ullamara, but my daughter attends primary school locally, and we are very much heavily invested in the community here, both economically, socially, culturally and ethically. I'd like to add to Nicole's questions and comments. Beyond fiscal responsibility, this is about moral clarity, not just where our money goes, but who we are as a community. When we talk about multiculturalism and human rights here in Vic Park, we're proud of those values. But if our spending quietly supports atrocities overseas, like what's heartbreakingly happening in Gaza, then we're not living up to those values at all. Other councils have shown solidarity through procurement. We believe this is something Victoria Park can also achieve. By aligning our spending with these values...
Sorry to interrupt. This is question time. It sounds to me like you're making a statement. Is this the
It's building
question?
up to a question.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you're welcome to make a statement in public statement time.
Sure.
So if we could get to the question, that would be terrific. Thank you.
No worries. Okay. Well, given the ICJ's finding of plausible genocide in Gaza and our shared moral duty as a community, how will this council ensure that our policies, procurement only being one of them, actively uphold human rights so our community isn't silently complicit in atrocities abroad?
It's a great question. And I would definitely invite you to raise this with individual councillors, because this is the sort of thing that individual councillors can raise as a notice of motion or can bring to a concept forum to discuss. This is how we bring things to the attention of the council and put things on the council agenda. So my recommendation would be to email all the councillors if you want to, or pick a few of us, and raise this as a concerned member of the community about something that you'd like to see happen.
Beautiful. And just a question for myself personally, you guys do accept that I am a member of this community, given we spend most of our time in Vic Park?
As far as I'm concerned, everyone's welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. Mr. Herb Rowe is next on my list. If you'd like to come forward, Mr. Rowe, tell us your name and your suburb, and if you can then proceed with your questions.
Herb Rowe from Carlisle. You're probably getting sick of me coming in here all these times. The usual old story about those dreaded traffic lights that aren't anywhere near for so many years. And yet the government can build this huge railway line, stations and everything in a couple of years, but we can't get any traffic lights.
I'm not sick of you at all, Mr. Rowe. I agree with you. The traffic lights also drive me around the bend. Should we ask the Chief Operations Officer if she's got an update for us?
Just the slightest little bit of information would be wonderful.
Ms. Adams, can you help us, please?
Thank you, through the chair. Just for clarity, it's the Miller and Shepperton traffic lights that I'm assuming it's about. And while I can report that the design is substantially complete, we are still waiting on service authorities. So there are relocations. I understand your frustration with that because it's out of our hands as well.
Sorry, and who are the services that the council's waiting on? Is it? I just don't understand what's taken the services so long.
Ms. Adams?
So my understanding is we do have what we need from Main Roads. Not that that's a service authority, but that was one of the authorities we were waiting for the design feedback, but that is not delayed. And I understand it's more with the Western Power and some of the telecommunications providers.
All right. Does the council just sit back and wait for them to come along and say, hello, I'm back here, or does the council get on to anybody to try and push things? Like, as I said, the railway line, it's a huge thing compared to a better set of traffic lights, and it's 2 years and it's done. So, this thing, tonight I was coming up here, four times 4 cars went through red lights. No, it's only going to be a matter of time somebody's killed there. Buses are even going through the red lights now. So, anyway, that's it.
We share your frustration, Mr. Rowe. That's really what I can tell you. Did you have another question?
Yes. When the Archer Street redevelopment, or for the cycle path, was put forward and they started work on there, I was over talking to, I think it was Rizwan, about the reticulation on the verges between Star Street and Mars Street. We used to have beautiful buffalo grass verges, and then they ripped up all the retic, and I asked him if it was going to replace, and he said yes, but it has not been replaced. Since then, the grass has all been planted from Mars Street down to the shops in Planet Street, and there's still nothing being done with the once beautiful buffalo, which is now just sand and weeds. Is the council going to do that now that they've planted grass in the other section?
Ms Adams?
Thank you. Through the chair, officially I'll take it on notice. I just have to check whether or not there was, what landscaping was planned in that area, and therefore what reticulation, if any, is planned for that. So I'll come back to you with an answer.
Because that cycle path that they put in with the little garden beds in, the reticulation's gone from the verge into there. So it just hasn't been touched up.
We'll take that on notice and get back
Thank
to you,
you.
Mr Rowe. Thank you.
And one more. I think number 68 Star Street. I think that's might be something to do with the sump from the council. Something I remember seeing some water pipes go through the middle of there. I'm not quite sure, but I'm pretty sure it is a council. 68 Star Street. It's maybe 2 blocks there, and it certainly needs some taken care of, the weeds and everything, and people have been dropping rubbish there now, like concrete and other different bits and pieces. Could you look into that, please?
We'll take that on notice as well. Thank you, Mr Rowe.
Thank you.
All right, thank you to those people. Is there anyone else from the public gallery who has a question that they'd like to ask this evening? No? All right, we will move on to public statement time then. We have a pre-submitted public statement from Alex Ford, which might give some further understanding to the pre-submitted questions that were asked earlier. And so I will be reading that out on behalf of Alex Ford. And once again, these are not my words. These are the words of a community member. Our site at 18 Oswald Street has been designated CW3, while every other site on Oswald Street has been designated CW4, allowing 18-storey development potential. This results in a major planning inconsistency. Our site is now the only CW3 lot on the entire street, despite having the same zoning, mixed use, and RACO code as CW4 sites. 18 Oswald Street is a corner lot in a highly visible strategic location, typically suited to greater height and intensity, not less. It is also the widest block on Oswald Street, making it ideal for stepped or tiered development that addresses height transitions to lower scale areas, e.g. Horden Street, more effectively than narrower CW4 sites. The current CW3 designation may unintentionally undermine development outcomes and diminish land value and investment viability, despite the site's unique capacity to accommodate context-sensitive height. We recognise the intent to transition toward the residential character area, but 18 Oswald is better suited to provide that transition than most CW4 lots due to its size and corner geometry. The exclusion from CW4 or major site classification appears to be arbitrary or based on assumptions during early construction stages, not current site conditions. This issue could be resolved now through a small amendment or via future variation mechanisms, but we request formal recognition that 18 Oswald warrants flexibility at the same level as adjacent CW4 sites. All right, that has now been read as requested by the community member. First up on our list of people who are in the gallery to make a statement is Vince Maxwell. If you could come forward, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Vince Maxwell from Vic Park. Councillors, the financial statements paint a clear picture. Many capital projects remain untouched. No design work, no scoping, no progress. Without at least a defined scope and some preliminary design, these projects can't even reach the tender stage, let alone begin construction. A review of the list shows a significant number of projects stalled, with many others only just getting underway, meaning they're likely to roll into the next financial year. Historically, the town has delivered less than $1 million per month in capital works. This year, $60 million budget would have required 5 times that rate, a target that's simply not realistic based on past performance. Unless something changes, the backlog going into 2025-26 will be enormous, equivalent to around 4 years' worth of completed capital works. That's work ratepayers have already paid for, but which remains undelivered. That's why I urge you to reconsider the proposed $5.8 million in new capital works for the upcoming budget. Adding more projects to an already overloaded program won't solve the problem. If urgent work is required, it can be managed by reprioritising existing projects already in the system. This is about giving the town a chance to catch up and the time to develop strategies to improve delivery capacity. Continuing to raise rates while under-delivering capital works is not sustainable and not fair to the community. So put simply, cutting the $5.8 million in new works will allow for a rate reduction of more than 10% while leaving the town with several years' worth of projects that are already in the pipeline. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maxwell. That's all I have on my list. Is there anyone in the public gallery who'd like to come up and make a statement? We have time. The statements are 2 minutes each. Anyone? Anyone? Nope. There is still opportunity at the end of the evening to make statements if you would wish to do so, and to ask questions for that matter. All right, thank you very much. I will now close public statement time at 7:05 p.m. Thank you. All right, moving on. Item 7, confirmation of minutes and receipt of notes from any agenda briefing forum. We have a recommendation that Council 1 confirms the minutes of the special council meeting held on the 14th of May 2025. 2, confirms the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 20th of May 2025. And 3, receives the notes of the agenda briefing forum held on the 3rd of June 2025. Can I please have a mover and a seconder for that item? Anyone? Still seeking a mover and a seconder? That's moved Councillor Cruiser and seconded Councillor Minson. Councillor Cruiser, would you like to be heard on this? Councillor Minson, anything to offer? No. Is there any dissent? I declare that carried unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Item 8, is that recording? Is that? Yep. Yeah, okay. The system's moving slower than we are, but that's all right. We'll race it to the end of the night. Item 8, presentation of minutes from external bodies, there are none. Item 9, presentations, petitions, there are none. Presentations, there are none. And deputations, there are none. Item 10, method of dealing with agenda business. The recommendation is that the following items be adopted by exception resolution and the remaining items be dealt with separately. They are 11.1, Council Resolution Status Report, May 2025. 11.2, Black Swan Theatre Partnership, The Pool. 13.1, portion of 3 Canning Highway, Victoria Park, evaluation of EOI submissions. 14.1, statement of accounts, April 2025. And 14.2, financial statements, April 2025. Can I please ask for a mover and a seconder to move those items by exception resolution? That's moved Councillor Hamer and seconded Councillor Devereux. Councillor Hamer, would you like to be heard? Councillor Devereux, anything? Is there any dissent? All right, I declare those carried unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone. Moving on to the remainder of the agenda, items 11.1 and 11.2 have been dealt with by exception resolution. Item 11.3 has not, because it was a late item, and that is Advocacy Actions and Progress, Perth Entertainment and Sporting Precinct. The recommendation is that Council notes the advocacy actions taken since February 2025 in relation to opposition to a motorsport street circuit at Burswood Park. Can I ask, please, for a mover and a seconder for that item? That's moved Councillor Hamer and seconded Councillor Miles. Councillor Hamer, would you like to be heard? No. Councillor Miles, would you like to be heard? Is there any dissent? No, I declare that moved unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Moving on to the Chief Community Planner reports, item 12. 12.1, Albany Highway Precinct Structure Plan, report on submissions and recommendations to endorse for WAPC approval. We have a recommendation that Council 1 accepts the report on submissions and schedule of submissions as presented in attachments A and B. 2, endorses the modifications to the Albany Highway Precinct Structure Plan AHPSP as presented in Attachment C for final approval. 3, refers the AHPSP and endorsed schedule of modifications, Attachment C, to the Western Australian Planning Commission, WAPC, for final approval. And 4, initiates an amendment to Local Planning Scheme Number 2, LPS 2, to align the local planning framework with the modified AHPSP, Attachment D. Can I ask, please, for a mover and a seconder for that item? That's moved Councillor Cruiser and seconded Councillor Melrosa. Councillor Cruiser, is there anything you would like to say at this stage? Councillor Melrosa, would you like to speak at this stage? Not at this stage. Councillor Minson, I believe you have something you'd like to contribute.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'd like to move a procedural motion at the stage that Council defers consideration of this item until after a concept forum, which is to be held no later than the end of July 2025, and is to consider the development contribution strategy for the Albany Highway Precinct Structure Plan.
Thank you, Councillor Minson. Can we ask your reason, please, and then we'll ask for a seconder.
Thank you. To allow for proper consideration of the development contribution strategy for the Albany Highway Precinct Structure Plan area due to the significant changes proposed to the plan after community consultation.
Thank you, Councillor Minson. Can I seek a seconder for that procedural motion, please? That's been seconded by Councillor Hamer. Now, because it's a procedural motion, there is no debate. So if people can please vote electronically on this procedural motion. Thank you.
Point of order on that.
Oh,
Deputy Mayor.
sorry, Councillor Minson.
Yeah, my understanding is that I can speak to the procedural motion for 5 minutes. State.
Just give us a second, Councillor Minson. Hang on. I did ask. We'll find out. Yep, you're correct. Councillor Minson, please proceed.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I guess just starting off, referring this item back to a concept forum will allow for adequate review and consideration of the development contribution strategy for this area. So the changes which have been proposed, and noting that the post-community consultation, it represents a significant concession being given to developers and a significant departure from the original strategy that went out for advertisement. So ultimately the changes are going to cost the town in excess of $100 million once development has occurred over the long term. So quite a large amount and so quite a significant change proposed. These are contributions which would have helped fund new community assets. So they would ease the financial burden on the wider community. And reducing the contributions is going to lead to poorer public realm outcomes for the community. Of a particular concern is the removal of the public open space contribution in an area with a highlighted issue of low supply of public open space. And the proposed plan to now address these issues is through a reduced community benefit strategy, which in my opinion doesn't demonstrate orderly and proper planning principles. The community benefit contributions may not even materialise and they may not be invested in the town's priorities. And with experience elsewhere in Perth with these community benefit strategies, that these contributions have been used to improve developments on private land rather than deliver wider community benefits. So a lot of the justification that underpins these proposed changes are concerns with development viability. All the published analysis, though, has demonstrated that development would still be viable with the contribution strategy proposed in the advertised plan. And I think to note that long-term planning should not be so strongly influenced by short-term economic conditions, such as the unprecedented residential construction market. The market will cool and average construction market conditions should be what we consider when we make this type of long-term decision making. To use the short-term economic conditions is going to drive the wrong outcomes here. And I'd like to note that this item is not very time critical. There's no real adverse impact to the town from deferring this item by 2 months. So my proposal gets it to a concept forum in July, brings it back to council then by August, meaning that all the current councillors in this iteration of council can still decide on this matter. And so really it only ends up a 2-month delay, which I don't think is of any material significance. So ultimately, to properly consider the significant departure from the advertised development contribution strategy, a referral to a concept forum I think is appropriate, as it will give the town time to prepare a clear strategy on how it intends to fund these proposed asset investments in this area. It will also allow time for elected members to consider the consequences of these changes.
Thank you, Councillor Minson. All right, as it is a procedural motion, there is no debate. So if everyone could please vote on that procedural motion. Thank you. Okay, that procedural motion has been defeated. Those in favour, Councillor Minson. Those against, Councillor Anderson, Councillor Melrosa, Councillor Miles, Councillor Devereux, Councillor Hamer, Councillor Crozer and myself, Deputy Mayor Ife. So we will now proceed to consider and debate the item. Councillor Minson, I believe you have a considerable amendment to move. I will first, however, ask the mover and the seconder if they would like to speak now to the items. No, not at this stage? No? Okay. Councillor Minson, can I hand to you, please?
Yes, so this amendment should have been provided, so it can be brought up. It is quite long. So the amendment is to modify point 2 of the officer's recommendation. So 2 would now read, would you like me to read it all out, or?
Yes, please. If you could read it all out, that would be great. And I'll discuss with the room whether we deal with each of them individually. Thanks.
So the amendment is to modify point 2 to read endorses the modifications to the Albany Highway Precinct Structure Plan as presented in attachment C for final approval subject to the following modifications. So A, delete modification 4 related to the removal of clause 3.2.1 POS cash and lieu. B, amend attachment A to delete the proposed modification related to part 2 of the Albany Highway Precinct Structure Plan on point 3.2.3 local planning policies regarding the application of LPP 29 public private developer contribution, which describes a policy applying to the base primary controls only for development zone mixed use or centre. Delete modification 36 and 44 related to modifications to part 1, section 4, community benefit clause B, provision of community benefit by amending attachment A to delete the proposed modification to introduce a tiered incentive model for calculating the monetary value of community benefit contributions. D, delete modification 37 and 44 related to modifications to part 1, section 4.0, community benefit, table 12, schedule of priority public benefits, and attachment A that propose to introduce new categories for community benefits related to 1, smart infrastructure initiatives, 2, enhanced water management strategies, 3, urban greening, 4, public amenities, toilet secure micro mobility, bike parking, 5, sustainability, modification to existing provision, 6, enhanced heritage retention and restoration. E, amend modification 10 related to modifications to table 11, additional major site development requirements, and attachment A to delete modifications which remove the minimum areas for the required provision of public open space for the following major sites. M2 Causeway, reinstate the requirement for a minimum area of 1,500 square metres. 2, M4, Victoria Park, reinstate requirement for minimum area of 1,500 square metres. 3, M6 East Victoria Park, reinstate requirement for minimum area of 2,000 square metres. 4, M7 East Victoria Park, reinstate requirement for minimum area of 2,000 square metres. F, delete modification 30 related to increasing the base building height for M7 from 8 stories to 10 stories. G, amend modification 15 on attachment related to changing the causeway sub-precinct development requirements for the corner of Geddes Street and Albany Highway from CW3 to CW2.
Thank you for that very long amendment, Councillor Minson. I'm going to let you have a drink of water, and then I'm going to ask you, please, if you could state your reason before we call for a seconder. Thank you.
So the amendment is made up of the following respective reasons. So A through to G, which so these reasons correspond to the A to G in the amendment above. So A is about maintaining the public open space 5% cash and lieu contribution as per the advertised precinct structure plan, to ensure that appropriate contributions are captured from future developments to assist the town in funding and delivering its public open space improvement and public realm projects with orderly and proper planning, ultimately addressing the identified public open space shortfall in this area. B, so that's about maintaining the full 1% public art contribution as per the advertised precinct structure plan to ensure the fair application of this requirement and its associated policy across the town. C is about maintaining the community benefit contribution rates at 3% of the bonus construction value as per the advertised precinct structure plan to ensure that appropriate contributions are captured from future developments to assist the town in funding and delivering its community infrastructure projects with orderly and proper planning. Amendment D is about maintaining the original list of community benefits as per the advertised precinct structure plan, and to remove any reference to the town preferring in-kind delivery of the community benefits to ensure that community benefits are delivered with orderly and proper planning, which benefit the wider community. E is about maintaining the requirement for single public open spaces and their minimum size requirements on major sites as per the advertised precinct structure plan to address the identified public open space shortfall in this area with orderly and proper planning. F is about maintaining the original M7 building height as 8 stories to ensure fairness in planning and zoning decisions. And G is about modifying the zoning of the lot on the corner of Geddes and Albany Highway, 181 Albany Highway to CW2 to ensure that Victoria Park Primary School is protected from direct overdevelopment impacts.
Thank you very much, Councillor Minson. Can I please call on a seconder for Councillor Minson's amendment? There is no seconder. Oh, it appears that the tech is failing us. The tech is failing us. So, Councillor Hamer, were you indicating a willingness to second it? Thank you, Councillor Hamer. That's seconded. Councillor Hamer, can we report that, please? And hopefully the tech is just having a moment because of the rain. Councillor Minson, I will ask you to speak to your amendment. Just to let elected members know, we will be speaking to and debating the amendment as a whole, but if there is a desire to do so, we can vote on each point separately. Does that make sense? Okay, excellent. But we will not be speaking to and debating each point separately. Councillor Malrosa, was that a question? I answered it. So normal rules of engagement apply, but we can separate out the voting process. Councillor Minson, would you like to speak to your amendment, please? Bearing in mind you've just given us a very detailed reason.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'll run through them now with a bit more detail, I guess, for each point as to why I think these changes are justified. So firstly, on the putting the public open space contribution back in, so the 5%, just like to point out that this is what was advertised, and this would apply to all developments, so the base developments and bonus developments, which is kind of a critical point, as a community benefit only applies to bonus developments. So this POS contribution would apply to all development in this area. I'd like to point to, I guess, the standard requirement for residential subdivision, which is normally 10%. It's a 10% contribution, either in land ceded or in cash and lieu. And what we advertised was 5%, and now what we're voting on is 0%. And acknowledging that this is an infill area, there isn't necessarily direct guidance on this, but there is a draft kind of operational policy from the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage, which reiterates the requirement for 10%, but suggests that if you're in an infill area, you can start to go lower than 10%. But it does recommend that you don't go lower than 5%. It also recommends that any lowering from 10% is justified in a planning instrument, and it does recommend structure plans as an appropriate planning instrument. So I don't think there's an issue there. It also recommends a minimum 5% for mixed-use sites, which is a majority of this area. So it does actually provide guidance on that too. So the current proposal of 0% isn't really supported anywhere in documentation. In terms of viability, which is, I guess, the justification behind removing this, so obviously a 10% requirement is applied pretty much all over Perth and all over WA, and is, it hasn't been impacting viability. We're still having, record kind of development, and the housing construction market is red hot. So I don't think, I think that shows that a 5% kind of requirement wouldn't impact viability. And additionally, the viability analysis that we have done as part of our precinct structure plan didn't raise a concern with this condition as impacting viability. And I guess just to point to the opportunity here, so the funds collected have a clear connection to the assets investments through the PSP's public realm strategy. So the types of things include traffic calming, micro parks, shared spaces, curb extensions, public open space improvements, and just general greening, all things that we as a town indicate as a priority. But we need to fund those things, and this is the equitable way to do it. So fundamentally, that one is about as a matter of fairness. So this amendment would ensure that new development contributes to the cost of building the new infrastructure required to make the town a livable community. On the 1% public art contribution amendment, so this would mean that all developments pay the 1% contribution, whether it's a base development or a bonus development. So we have a policy that sets out the expectation that a 1% contribution is paid for all development over the town. So I think it's important that we continue to maintain that. So the modifications proposed would reduce the contribution from larger developments, or allow them to fulfil this through a separate community benefit contribution. So saying that they don't have to pay, if they did pay the art contribution, it would fulfil their community benefit contribution, is really counterproductive, I think, to trying to deliver wider community infrastructure. So that's on that public art one. On maintaining the 3% rate for community benefit, so the intent of this amendment is to go back to what was advertised in the original PSP. So this 3% only applies to bonus developments. So keeping that in mind, and it only applies to the bonus construction value. So if a developer came and wanted to only just do the base development, they can do that and they don't pay this community benefit. But if they want the bonus, then they have to pay the community benefit. So it's important to keep that bit in mind, that it doesn't impact, the base development viability in any way. So
apologies, Councillor Minson, you've just hit 5 minutes, so I will move that we permit Councillor Minson to have one additional time period of 5 minutes. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Melrosa. Is there any dissent? No, declare that carried unanimously. I've checked, Councillor Minson, you're only allowed one extension, so you've got 5 more minutes. Thanks.
So applying and capturing this community benefit is going to be critical to allow the town to fund its prioritised community infrastructure program for the area. And I'll talk later about why it's important to capture this in cash and kind for us to deliver our priorities as we see fit. And again, viability. Every scenario we ran, the consultants ran, showed that a developer would pick this, would pick the option to do the bonus development and pay the contribution every single time at 3%. So there isn't a viability issue as per our published reporting. On the point about maintaining the original list of community benefits, so removing the additional ones proposed, I just want to say that I agree with the development outcomes listed there. I'd like to see that type of thing happen in developments, but I don't think it's appropriate to say that would deliver a community benefit. It should be a standard for the developments that they provide landscaping and greenery and protect heritage, but that shouldn't be considered a wider community benefit. I don't see how that fulfills their requirement to contribute towards community infrastructure. There has been previous experience of having a big wide community benefits list ends up meaning that developers fulfill their requirement through delivering, I guess, what we deem a community benefit, but really it's just an improvement to their development, which really only the residents of that particular development get the benefit of, rather than the wider community, which is the intent of the community benefit strategy. The point to maintain the single public open spaces hopefully is quite self-explanatory. There's definitely unique benefits to having large open spaces, and delivering these through the major sites is really the only opportunity to address the shortfall of POS along the Albany Highway. Changing the M7 building height back to 8 stories as per the original proposal, I think just demonstrates kind of fairness and equity in the process. Really, this was changed due to the feedback from a large developer, Hawaiian Group, on their lot to say, can we have an extra 2 stories here? I don't think going back to the 8 stories won't impact the actual built outcome. I think they'll go after the bonus building height anyway. It'll just mean that they pay a smaller community benefit if we change their base height. So put that back. And the last one is about the Victoria Park Primary School. So there's a little corner lot which Victoria Park Primary School kind of wraps around. And I'm proposing to change the building height limit there from 8 to 6 stories. It was originally proposed at 18. We're saying bring it down to 8 anyway, which I think is a good idea, but I'm saying I think it should be 6, which is the lowest kind of zoning for this area. It would still remain mixed use, but I don't think it's appropriate to have large apartments overlooking primary schools. So I think having that as the lowest kind of zone in that area is appropriate. So that's all my amendments A to G explained. So I think if we vote on them one by one, I'd be supportive of that. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Minson. Councillor Hamer, as the seconder, would you like to speak to this proposed amendment?
Nothing for the proposed amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamer. All right, so we can now proceed to debate, but just before I do, I'd like to get just a measure in the room. Would people like to vote on each of these as individual items? Just nods will do. All right, that's what we'll do. Right, we've had a speaker for, and we have had the seconder decide that they would prefer not to speak. Is there anyone who would like to speak against these amendments broadly? Is there anyone else who'd like to speak for these amendments? Councillor Melrosa.
I'll do a short one because I'll speak again later on the other one. Do I get to speak substantively on the substantive?
Oh, on the substantive,
As
yes.
a seconder? I
Yes.
do, don't I? Yeah. So I'll break it up. It'll be nicer for everybody that's listening. Sorry,
Councillor Melrosa, apparently because you didn't want to speak. Ignore me.
Sure.
To answer your question, if this amendment passes and therefore it's an amended substantive, you do get to speak when we're debating the substantive. If it doesn't pass, then you don't get to speak when we're debating the substantive.
So I may as well speak now.
Or forever hold your peace, my friend.
Look, I generally agree with Councillor Minson's amendments. I do want to touch on some of the things that he mentioned. In my experience and observations over the years, the views of developer are often given reasonable to considerable weight when they make a submission to draft planning framework, especially where it relates to development feasibility. Planners and perhaps anyone with a mindset that's reasonable would respect the developers have a unique and intimate knowledge of the feasibility of development, given this aspect is arguably the most significant thing about whether a development breaks ground or not. Claims such as not feasible are made when measured against what seems to be reasonable objectives, though, or requirements in planning frameworks that seek to provide community benefit in one way or another, and that's pretty common. And it shouldn't come as a surprise that a developer wants to reduce costs by seeking a less prescriptive planning framework, as much as it shouldn't surprise anyone that an authority such as a local government wishes to seek a higher standard that leads to improved outcomes for the community through a more prescriptive planning framework. But my view would be that until that framework is actually tested, that claim that something is not feasible can't be substantiated, because this all sits within a property cycle and we're in a different part of it at any particular time. And Councillor Minson touched on that, and in the respect that it's difficult to build residential apartments at this point unless you're in a very wealthy area, and that's just a phase of the property cycle. So when we look at changing planning frameworks that are static to fit into that mould, it is maybe not the best approach. I would think, in my view, that we start quite high in a negotiating sense, and a structure plan is really just a negotiating document. It's a due regard document as well. So in the event that maybe something's overly prescriptive, there would be an avenue for a developer to argue their point against that. So, and I would think during the DA process that that's the right time for it. It's not the right time to lower the standards of the structure plan or precinct plan and set it at a bar that is so low. And purely because it's very hard to punch up. It's a lot easier to punch down. So if we wanted, say, 1,500 square metres on a development block, and that was in the structure plan, well, a developer would have to argue against that. But if we have nothing, then there is nothing for us to say, well, we want 3,000, or we want more, or we want 1,500. We've got no numbers. So on that basis, I think Councillor Minson's amendments, and they all have the same kind of, notion around maintaining what has been put in there. Let's not forget the structure plan was written by a pretty well-regarded planning firm, and the content is a balance between good planning and responding to the needs of the community. So the community was involved in it at the very early stages, and what's in it is as a result of what people were kind of suggesting in those early stages. So when you look at the 135 survey respondents, 75 people who signed a petition relating to the Merton Street sump and the interface, and the 27 written submissions, and the few that the town used to justify the changes. I mean, I think that's not many people compared to the overwhelming amount of community that got involved in it and probably have an expectation of what we should be delivering in this. I think they would be very disappointed if the community had optics on this change and thought, why is this change happening and what are we getting out of this? There's really nothing, set in stone. So I think overall they are really the reasons why I would support Councillor Minson's amendments on this structure plan item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Melrosa. I'm just going to ask, is there anyone who would like to speak in any direction on this amendment at this stage? Councillor Cruiser.
Thanks, and thank you, Councillor Minson, for your attention to the details here.
Sorry, Councillor Cruiser, that rain has got very noisy. If you could maybe have the microphone a tiny bit closer to you, that would actually be very helpful. Thank you.
People don't usually tell me to be more loud, but Yes, so thank you, Councillor Minson, for your attention to the details of this plan. I'm broadly supportive of these, and particularly at working to maintain contributions to public open space, to public art and community benefits. I will be opposing Amendment F because 10-storey buildings in that area as a base are very reasonable given the higher density in that area, the range of services available in terms of shops, restaurants, medical services and so on, and also public transport and active transport corridors. I note that in your advocacy for this, you mentioned that these blocks are owned by a company who we would expect to develop to a higher level. I don't think that our zoning should be shaped by our knowledge of who owns land at one particular time, but instead by the best use of that land and what we would expect to see from that land. Otherwise, I think that these are thoughtful amendments which respond carefully to the draft as it was written and to the public feedback that we've had.
Thank you, Councillor Cruiser. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the amendment? No. Oh, just in the nick of time. Councillor Devereux, what were you doing? You were just sitting there, nearly... Anyway, Councillor Devereux.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I've just very briefly, I think support the words from Councillor Cruiser. I think and appreciate the work that Councillor Minson has put into this consideration, and I agree with him there and Councillor Cruiser. There is a lot of scope for a more emphasis on public open space and art and community benefits. We've heard from a number of people in our community about the importance of public open space, and we know we have not enough of it in a lot of Vic Park, but we also know we want to have more dense, compact, higher density that is close to services and transport. And I think this area is prime for that, but we do also want protection of the biodiversity in sumps and the public open space and so on. So the only two that I do have some concern about is the last two, but given we're breaking it up, that's you can choose the flavour of ice cream you want. So on that basis, I will be not necessarily supporting the last two amendments because I think those height and density considerations are important alongside the other considerations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Devereux, and thank you to the reference to the dinner that we just had. Anyone else who'd like to speak on this amendment? Yes, Councillor Miles.
I guess I would just say that I'm broadly supportive of the amendments to maintain the public open space and public art and community benefits. For me, so yeah, I'm happy to support those amendments. I feel like the first 5 are very broadly for the community. I feel like the last 2 are a little too specific, and I feel like that feels to me like it's more sort of meddling with specific things. That's not quite the right word than thinking about the community as a whole. I can't really understand why why we need to be reducing things by 2 stories when we're trying to get more density in Albany Highway. And I guess specifically with the primary school, I don't understand why we can't have apartments next to primary schools. And if we've got 8-storey apartments or 10-storey apartments or 6-storey apartments, for me that argument doesn't stack up. So I will not be supporting the last 2, but I will be supporting the others.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Anything further from anyone before I hand to Councillor Minson to close debate on the amendment? No? Councillor Minson, would you like to close debate on the amendment before we proceed to voting on each individual item?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I'll just respond to, I guess, the feedback on the last two points from the councillors. And I guess, I understand your position. And, I agree that, that Albany Highway is the appropriate spot for medium density development and mixed use development. Yes, on Councillor Miles's point is why these two specific lots. It is about for the M7 lot, so the reducing from the 10 to the 8. That is reversing, I guess, the decision by the town post community consultation from making it 8 to 10. It's not an arbitrary kind of pick this one. It's about, I guess, two parts. It's about, I don't think it's appropriate that a landholder really can write in and say, I'd like 2 extra stories, and that we accept that without, a lot of justification as to why we should support that increase. And I guess in broader terms, like that lot there can be built up to 22 stories. And that's kind of where I'd see that development going. Really, the impact from that increase is in that calculation for the community benefits. It will just mean that they will pay a reduced community benefit at that site. And the other specific site, obviously, is the school. I think that's one self-explanatory about not having apartments overlooking schools in terms of, I guess, privacy for the students as well as overshadowing, their open space. It is on the north side of the school. So I think the smaller impact as possible there is appropriate. And I just point to the fact that these two combined changes, being just 2 stories each, is not going to impact the infill density in any material way for the precinct. There's a lot of development opportunity over the whole precinct. These two changes are to deal with site-specific, I guess, issues, and won't change the overall outcome of this precinct structure plan in a material way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Minson. All right. Hopefully the tech is back up and working for voting. We will try. We are going to go through these one at a time. So point A, which was around the cash in lieu provisions, the 5% cash in lieu contribution for public open space. If everyone could please vote on that point of the amendment. Is it working? There we go. The technology is working again, and I declare that one carried unanimously. Thank you, everybody. The second point, maintain the full 1% public art contribution. Can we all vote on that item, please? I declare that one carried unanimously as well. Item C, the community benefit contribution rates at 3%. If everyone could vote on that one, please. That's carried unanimously as well. Thank you. Item D, the original list of community benefits as per the advertised precinct structure plan. If everyone could vote on that one, please. Declare that one carried unanimously as well. Item E, maintaining the requirements for single public open spaces. If everyone could vote on that one, please. Declare that one carried unanimously. Item F, the M7 building height of 8 stories. If everyone could vote on that one, please. We don't have votes from Councillor Hamer and Councillor Miles recorded. Okay, I declare that that one has been defeated. Those in favour, Councillor Melrosa, Councillor Hamer and Councillor Minson, and those against, Councillor Anderson, myself, Deputy Mayor Ife, my eyesight's not great, Councillor Miles, Councillor Cruiser and Councillor Devereux. Thank you, and we'll move on to item G, the zoning around Victoria Park Primary School. If everyone could vote on that one, please. This is exciting. That is a tied vote. I'm waiting for the crosses and ticks to come up so I can tell you. So those against, Councillor Anderson, Councillor Melrosa, Councillor Miles and Councillor Devereux, and those in favour are myself, Councillor Cruiser, Councillor Hamer and Councillor Minson. Look at me squinting into the distance. So that gives me the extremely dubious pleasure of having a casting vote, and I will continue with my vote in favour of this item. So thank you very much, everybody, for all of those votes and for getting through that so efficiently. We now move, so I declare that carried. Is that recorded? Yep. We now move on to the substantive item as amended. Is there anyone who would like to speak either in favour or against the substantive item as amended? We have a question from Councillor Hamer.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. My question was just about the officer's comment in the further considerations. Just wanted to clarify what was meant at the bottom of page 34. Recommends that the local planning strategy is the appropriate mechanism for contributions for public open space. I just wanted to clarify, this is contributions from the developer and not our own funding for these areas.
Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ife. Thanks for the question, Councillor Hamer. The town's local planning strategy and associated public open space strategy will provide the appropriate mechanism and basis to assess both, and this is first one is in response to your first question, contributions from the developer, question mark. Development contributions towards public open space is the answer to the first, by identifying where and when contributions may be justified based on walkable catchments, access and future needs. And then the second part of your question, if I've got this right, is you might not have asked this yet. Keep going. Yeah.
Just be a mind reader, Mr. Doy. We're all going to enjoy it.
Okay, all right. You were asking a question about funding liabilities for delivery. I could sense it. And so my answer is that in terms of town's funding liabilities, it guides the prioritisation and investment of public open space delivery based on our strategic servicing needs across the town, so what we actually need.
Does that help, Councillor Hamer?
It does. So just to clarify, the current arrangement of cash in lieu from this proposed policy would be limited to those areas that the funding comes from, but having this local planning strategy in the future would allow us to plan for where those funds be delivered in areas that required them on a needs basis, as opposed to a location of funds basis.
Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. So the provision that has been the subject of the amendment tonight relates to the precinct structure plan area, so public open space and the various things identified in the precinct structure plan within the boundary of the precinct structure plan. In the future, looking more broadly, if we were to pursue a local planning policy for the collection of public open space shortfall in conjunction with our local planning strategy and public open space strategy, would be for the town wide, for the needs of the town as a whole. Yeah.
Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to speak for or against this item now that has been amended? Look at that. I'm going to say it. Is there any dissent? I declare that carried unanimously. Thank you very much, everybody. Wow, that was such an anticlimax in the end. And I would like to thank the town staff who have worked tirelessly on this item, and I know it's been an awful lot of work. Thank you particularly to Miss Ward, who can now have a good night's sleep, I believe. All right, moving on to item 12.2, the development application for proposed shops, including supermarket, restaurants, cafes and childcare premises, numbers 1022 to 1032 Albany Highway and numbers 355 to 357 Shepperton Road, East Victoria Park, lots 1, 8, 30, 131, 132, 480, 481, 488 and 502. There is a very long recommendation that has been provided to all of us, and I will not read that out because we do want to get home at a decent time, or at least certainly before midnight. So I will ask if there is anyone who would like to move the officer's recommendation, please. The amended officer's recommendation that has been provided to us on our desks. That's moved Councillor Hamer and seconded Councillor Cruiser. Councillor Hamer, would you like to be heard, please?
I just had a couple of questions, if I might. Thank you.
You absolutely may.
We received an email from one of the officers this afternoon with some comments from the applicant. Can I ask the officer's opinion on what was raised in that memo?
I'm going to address that to Mr. Cruikshank.
Specifically, whether those points 6 and 8 would be recommended by the officers for the elected members to amend, or what? Any more background for those, please?
Mr. Cruikshank.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. So the applicant did put forward a memo this afternoon where they indicated they were broadly supportive of the recommendation, but they have a different position with respect to conditions 6 and 8. So condition 6, recommended condition 6, is that the right turn pocket on the Albany Highway west leg approaching the Shepperton Road intersection be extended. Their view is that from their traffic modelling, they believe that it doesn't actually result in any significant gain in the queuing capacity or the efficiency of that intersection. However, our view, the planning department's view and the traffic engineering view of the town is that it still does result in some additional capacity for vehicles to queue in that particular leg. So we think it's still worthwhile. Is there anything you want to add, Mr. Farmer? No? So I think that's our view at this point in time, is we believe it's still appropriate. With respect to the other condition, the applicants outlined as condition 8 was around new line marking on the section of Oates Street between Albany Highway and Shepperton Road to effectively have 2 lanes in each direction. The applicant's position is somewhat unclear. In the first page, they say that they don't necessarily agree with it, but then when you look at their comments, they have essentially just asked for some extra words to be added, which was adding the words or other suitable arrangements, because they raise a concern that if Main Roads weren't to approve of the line marking as is proposed, then they're left in a situation where they can't fulfil the condition. So insofar as if the applicant's position is that they seek the town's support to modify condition 8 to include those other words or other suitable arrangement, then I think that's probably appropriate to give some flexibility. But if their position was that they seek for that condition to be removed in its entirety, we would not agree with that, because we do consider that the line marking on Albany Highway does result in some material benefit and improvements to that movement into right-of-way 54. So I guess what I'm saying is that we would be supportive if council was of a mind to potentially amend condition 8 tonight to include the words or other suitable arrangements as the applicant has put forward in their submission.
Councillor Hamer.
On that, can I foreshadow, I would like to move that amendment if governance can set that up, please? Do you mean
It's just been pointed out that you're the mover of the motion, which is true, but he can still amend it, can't he? If he wants to. It's a good point. You can amend it right now with the agreement of the seconder. If you're feeling fancy, I would suggest you turn your mind to that. What a happy, helpful meeting we have. Governance, are you aware where those words would be inserted? Councillor Hamer, if you could read how Condition 8 would now read, please, for clarity for the minutes.
Sure.
Secretary.
Just reading from the applicant's comments, I haven't got the condition in front of me, but I can read both. They're asking it for it to say new line marking is to be installed on the section of Oak Street between Albany Highway and Shepperton Road, so that they are 2 marked lanes in each direction, comma, and the new word to be or other suitable arrangement, comma, to the satisfaction of the town. Detailed design drawings are to be submitted for the town's approval, and the approved design is to be implemented prior to occupancy of the development. The applicant/owner is responsible for all costs associated with design and implementation.
Thank you. So your amendment is proposing that you are simply inserting the words or other suitable arrangements between the words direction and to.
Correct.
In point 8. Have you got that, yep. Town staff? Brilliant. And Councillor Cruiser, you consent to that? That was easy. Councillor Hamer, as the mover, would you like to speak substantively to this item?
Nothing substantively, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cruiser, as the seconder, would you like to speak to this item? And I'm aware that you do have an amendment, but you're welcome to speak and then move your amendment, or just, look, whatever.
Briefly, just to say that this is an area that has been sitting as a great big hole in the ground for a very long time. And I acknowledge that a lot of people in the area have concerns about traffic. Unfortunately, absolutely anything we do to make this an attractive area for people to visit will result in more traffic unless we are very careful to provide many opportunities for mode shift. And some of the changes to this developer application now do allow for that to the extent that it is possible.
Thank you, Councillor Cruiser. Would you like to move your amendment now while we're that way inclined?
Yes, I would love to. So I'd like to move an amendment to change note 31 to read bicycle facilities for a minimum of 35 bikes, unless otherwise approved, are to be provided on site in accordance with Australian Standard AS 2890.3 and to the satisfaction of the town. This is to include bicycle facilities within close proximity of the entrance to the childcare centre. The bicycle parking facilities shall be installed and remain in place permanently unless otherwise approved by the town. And my reason for this is to make it easy for people who are taking their children to daycare or picking up their children to be able to park near the entrance so they can get the children and all of their various bags and belongings into the daycare easily.
I will ask, just as a shortcut, Councillor Hamer, would you be happy to accept that amendment to the moved motion?
I'm just not sure there's a difference. I'm reading that as the same as what's in the report.
It included the words to include bicycle facilities close to the entrance to the daycare centre. Put in between the words town and the bicycle.
Sure, yep, that's fine.
Are you content with that?
Yep.
There we go. That was easy. So we now have on the table the motion as put by as recommended by the town staff, with those 2 small amendments included. We have had Councillor Cruiser speak. Councillor Hamer has chosen not to speak at this stage. Is there anyone who would like to speak against this item? You have a question, Councillor Melrosa.
I've maybe 3 questions just about some of the conditions. One of them is condition 5 about the existing on-street parking bays on Albany Highway. This condition asks for them to be removed and converted to an extended lane for vehicle movement. Is this required because of the extra traffic, and could it be handled by having parking restrictions, say that restrict parking in the on-street bays during peak periods but allow for parking to be outside of peak periods so as to support the number of tenancies that face Albany Highway that are proposed in the development? That's the first question, by the way.
Should we address that to Mr Cruikshank or Mr Farmer? Or who wants it?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. So I recollect that this condition came about on advice of Main Roads. Main Roads thought that there could be some efficiencies gained again at that intersection by extending the length of the queuing within those car bays. So ultimately, we as the staff considered that was appropriate to do so. I understand the applicant's agreeable to that. I accept that the wording as proposed at the moment essentially is that it would be converted to a lane for vehicle movement at all times. Maybe there could be a position where, and this is where I guess I have to seek some further traffic advice or consideration, is maybe it's at certain times of the days and other times of the day it could be available for parking that benefits the development. So may I suggest that without having given that any further consideration, and it probably does need to occur, that maybe the council might just be content with leaving it as it is tonight. There is a DAP meeting that occurs on Thursday of next week, and potentially by that time we could have given some more thought to whether there could be maybe some changes to that to allow some parking at certain times of the day. And we can probably offer a view at the DAP meeting, and a DAP member can move an amendment if they consider that's appropriate.
Councillor Melrosa.
That was the perfect answer that I was expecting. Thank you, Robert. Second question.
Mr Cruikshank.
Mr Cruikshank, sorry. The second question is about, where is it? Oh, sorry, it's condition 4. I should have read this one first, maybe. The access to Albany Highway restricted to left in, left out, I believe, via a curb that will be installed. Is this primarily, I guess, to stop people from turning right out of Woolworths onto Albany Highway, or is it to prevent drivers on Albany Highway turning right into the, or both?
Mr Cruikshank.
Madam Deputy Mayor, it's to deal with both, but as you might recall from when this item came to a special council meeting on the 14th of May, the applicant at that point was contesting the restriction on access. They're proposing a full movement access, and essentially the traffic modelling associated with that full movement access indicated that vehicles would be queuing back through the Welshpool Road, Albany Highway, Shepperton Road intersection. Can you remember the distance, Mr Farmer? It was something quite considerable. It was, so with the right turn restriction, particularly the right turn restriction in, that eliminates that queuing back through that intersection, which is always the town's concern.
So, sorry, I need a bit more clarity, Mr Cruikshank. So does that mean that the applicant isn't proposing to change their design, so this is inherently become a condition?
Sorry, thank you, Councillor Melrose. I could have answered that better. So when the item came to a special council meeting on the 14th of May, the drawings and all the information the applicant had provided to the council had said that they still wanted a full movement access, albeit on the day of the council meeting. They had sent an email to say they were now accepting of a left in, left out restriction. So I've probably complicated things. Could just cut to the chase to say the current proposal that the applicant has now put forward is for a restriction. So it's a left in, left out only. The applicant's agreeable to that. All the applicant's documents now reflect it being a left in, left out access arrangement only.
Okay, that's good clarity, but I have one more concern, I guess, which is then, does not the crossover next door provide a right turn opportunity for people who wish to go to the Woolworths, therefore creates the same situation we're trying to prevent?
Madam Deputy Mayor, the draft Responsible Authority report contains a concept diagram of what that right turn restriction may look like. So it indicates that it would prevent a right turn movement into the development site, but it would specifically be designed to not prevent a right turn movement into the adjoining existing restaurant development, which already has access turning into the right. I guess maybe if I'm understanding, maybe the comment from Councillor Melrose may be suggesting that if people can't turn right directly into the Woolworths site, then they might deviously turn right into the driveway of the property next door and then still make their way into the Woolworths development. Do you have a comment on that, Mr. Farmer?
No, not at the minute, no.
I think it certainly wouldn't be as convenient or easy to make that movement, because you're not moving directly into the Woolworths development. You'd be driving through some private property to then get onto a small section of right of way to then have to turn right back into the access into the underground car park. So it's not to say it couldn't happen, but it's a more circuitous means of access.
I'd like to believe our community would never dream of behaving in such a way, Councillor Melrose. Any further questions?
One more. That's funny response. I feel like the community will figure that out pretty quickly. But one more, just about, I couldn't find it anywhere in the report. Maybe it's in there. How are we managing trolleys that leave the site and end up no longer on the premise? Is there a geo-lock? Is Woolworths proposing a geo-lock trolley system where it cannot leave the premise and end up in the streets?
Councillor, Mr. Cruikshank.
Madam Deputy Mayor, I don't recall seeing that in any of the information being provided by the applicant. I probably would say it's questionable whether it's a planning matter or a planning consideration, but I accept at the same time it's an issue commonly faced with shopping centres and their impacts on surrounding environment. So I'm happy to potentially pose that question to the applicant ahead of the DAP meeting next week.
Sounds good to me. I didn't want to say, can we add it as a condition, given that it might not be planning related. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cruikshank.
Thank you, Councillor Melrose. Yes, Councillor Hamer.
Thank you, Deputy. I had a question that I forgot to ask. It was in relation to the traffic management at the Row 54 and the previous traffic data, which was amended to reflect the change after the Keep Clear road markings. What is the tolerated maximum tolerance for those delays and traffic in that area before there was another condition required to sort of remedy that issue?
Mr. Cruikshank? Mr. Farmer?
Thank you for the question. There's a few parameters that you look at when you're looking at the results. So we will look at the level of service. I know that you're referring to the previous queue length. What happened was with the latest development application, they put in all the additional changes as well, and it reduced down a lot of the traffic lengths to the point where when you compare without the development, you would have things like queue lengths and degree of saturation actually reduced down. There are the parameters that you're asking for. I've just sort of put together a couple of things, but typically accepted intersection performance is defined as follows: 95th percentile worst, back of queue length, not interfering with adjacent intersections. So that's compared to what it would be with and without. Level of service D or worse, or if it's the same. So if it's worse, F, and the other one's F, that doesn't have a difference of concern. And then a degree of saturation. So for a priority controlled intersection, it's 0.8 and it's 0.9 at a signalised controlled intersection. Again, what we do is we compare with and without as well to see what the differences are.
And through the chair, so that intersection being quite short between the two traffic intersections that are currently in place, Obviously, that has easy capacity for that to sort of be blocked because of the distance between the two. But the option for left in, left out, no right turn wasn't supported because it would affect other landholders or other tenants. Is that correct?
Mr. Cruikshank?
In terms of that Oat Street right-of-way 54 access, it was found that the access as proposed, being essentially full movement for light vehicles, was acceptable in its current form, and there wasn't a necessity for there to be any access restrictions for that particular intersection. In saying that, it would be impractical to impose a restriction there as well to be left in, left out, as the proposed means of access for service vehicle trucks for Woolworths is to be by making a right turn movement from Oat Street into right-of-way 54. So there's a practical reason to why we wouldn't impose such a restriction, as well as the fact that the traffic evidence modelling indicates that a restriction of that kind is not required.
Councillor Hamer?
And there was one more question. The amended wording, condition 44, has gone from 1% public art with the previous 0.05. What was the background between that difference in public art contribution?
Mr. Cruikshank?
Madam Deputy Mayor, I hate to admit it, cut and paste. Should have been 1%.
That's good. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to speak for or against this item? Councillor Anderson.
I just really want to acknowledge that there have been significant challenges with this site, apart from the fact of its shape as well, being able to create something there that's appealing for the community and the streetscape, but also the challenges with traffic as well, and through effective communication and being able to speak with the developer, being able to come to a resolution, which is a really positive outcome. And I'm also very supportive of the parking of bikes near the childcare. I think that makes sense and is safe for drop off and pick up as well. So, supportive of that. And I look forward to the outcome of the date next week and hearing all about it.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Is there anyone else who would like to speak for or against this item? Councillor Melrosa, yes, you can.
Just something that I heard in the community. I mean, this conversation has gone on for quite a while around this development and the pros and cons for it. I think from my own measurements of sentiment, there was more people in favour of this development than not in favour. But I want to speak to some of the comments that were negative to the development, and a lot of it was obviously around traffic, and then some was about, well, something better should be there. So that's unfortunately not something we would consider because it's not before us. But the traffic situation, I think, is broadly, I guess, well, it's a big problem in terms of it being on one of the major routes into Perth. And I think the solutions are multifaceted. Part of the solutions are things that the town can do, that we can make decisions on, like as Councillor Crozer mentioned, building a bit more capacity in alternative transport, which I think is a very key thing, because when you look at the trends of shopping centres, or Woolworths and Coles more so, they're actually leaving shopping centres and they're coming out of that big box store and they're popping up down the road from you or around the corner. And I think everyone would agree if they've been to a local shopping centre in Vic Park, the Coles is mayhem every day of the week, except for maybe like 8:30 on a Monday night. I'm not sure what Woolworths is like down the other end because I don't go there, I go to the Coles. And I think when people say we don't need another shopping centre, there's one in Belmont, there's one in Vic Park, so on and so forth. Well, that's really, for me, it's such an incorrect statement because it doesn't allow for people to walk to a shop. And when you've got people in the community who can't drive, or are too young, or there's some mobility issue that they might have, having these local stores that you can actually go to without getting in your car is so vital to the vibrancy. And I think it's really a core tenement of what makes Vic Park so great, is that you can ditch the car and walk to places. So having a Woolworths here, while it might look and seem really chaotic with that intersection, I think it's actually quite a key node. It's the end of our Albany Highway Precinct structure plan, or maybe it's the beginning, depending on where you come from. Arguably, it is a really big node, and arguably it would have been lovely to see a nice residential tower there of some sort with some medium density. But I think having a Woolworths there or a Coles or whatever it might be is kind of the cornerstone to getting those kind of developments to happen, you know. And across the road we have Elizabeth Bailey House and Park, and I think that's really another, you know, a landmark development that's going to spur on this kind of development. So obviously with Albany Highway Structure, Precinct Structure Plan, and then these kind of developments popping up, that's really going to see that change in that node and really transform that place. So realistically, we've got two things to do as a town, and that's to ensure that we increase people's mobility on other devices that aren't a car. And I guess we can also spend a bit of time advocating for, you know, some sort of light rail that might have been mentioned in the Albany Highway Structure Plan, Precinct Structure Plan, or just generally building better, you know, connections through that zone. You know, we have the 99 bus, which is connecting to Oak Street, and that's quite a popular bus route. So, you know, there's some really good opportunities. The state government increased the bus priority along Shepperton Road, and I think from memory there's only going to be a minor change to that intersection, but the remaining priority remains post the elevated rail being opened. So I think realistically there's good bones here to make this great, and yes, we will see some increased congestion, but that should be the trigger for us to act and do something different to make it better, and it can definitely be fixed if there is a problem. So I'm going to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Melrosa. Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard on this item? I'm going to ask formally, is there any dissent? There's no dissent. I declare that carried unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone, for your considered comments on that item. Moving on, 13.1 has been dealt with by exception resolution. 13.2 was not by exception resolution because it was a late report. Feasibility report to resurface the Kensington Bushland pathways, request for extension. We have a recommendation the council approves an extension on the delivery of a feasibility report to resurface the Kensington Bushland pathways to October 2025. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? That's moved Councillor Devereux, seconded Councillor Cruiser. Councillor Devereux, would you like to be heard? Councillor Cruiser, would you like to be heard? Is there any dissent? No, no dissent. I declare that carried unanimously. Thank you, everybody. 14.1 and 2 have been moved by exception resolution, which moves us to 14.3, Transitional Residential and Support Worker Parking Permits Report. Councillor Hamer, I believe you have an alternate that you would like us to consider ahead of considering the officer's recommendation.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor Ife. I have an alternate, and it reads that the motion be amended to include point 2, town officers hosted...
Sorry, Councillor Hamer, if you have an alternate, you need to read the full motion as it will be presented. Thank you.
Okay. So the full motion as it will be hopefully supported. The recommendation is that Council notes the report findings of transitional, residential and support worker parking permits following the reinstatement of 4P time restrictions on Willis, Balmoral and Hampshire streets. With point 2, that the town officers host a concept forum with elected members before the October 2025 OCM to determine a new eligibility criteria, number of permits per property, and cost per permit. With point 3, that the CEO bring back to Council Policy 351 by the June 2026 OCM if changes are supported after that concept forum.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hamer. Can we have a seconder for that alternate motion, please? That's seconded Councillor Melrosa. Councillor Hamer, would you like to give us your reason and then speak to your item?
My reason is brief. The report shows that there are no issues having parking permits available to residents that have one on-site parking bay, as defined by the R codes. Also, it is not a crime from time to time to have one car at your house and someone else visiting your home for more than a few hours. Also, the officer's time and capacity to go on-site and measure property dimensions for each failed application has proven to be a waste of our resources.
Thank you. Would you like to proceed to speak to your alternate?
Yes, I did share what I was going to say, but I'll just read it out for anyone who missed it. I'd like to revisit the parking permits. Going back a few years ago when I was new to council, some residents reached out for an assistance to achieve an equitable parking solution in the area they reside. To recap, we heard a fantastic deputation, saw the petition and have had the 4P removed as a trial. We've then seen the 4P restored and the ability to obtain permits made available for 1 year, but only to select residents who live adjacent to 4P restrictions. Transitional permits are not restricted by our codes and were only made available by accident as the trial went for longer than 12 months when the 4P was removed. They are now able to find a parking bay on the street they live on without watching the clock and the looming threat of parking tickets. As we can see from the report, people are not owning the streets with multiple permits, parking spaces are still being turned over and the sky hasn't fallen in. The areas or locations that require permits are the ones where the free parking demand is high, but it's not demand from residents, it's from everyone else in the town looking for free parking. To manage our paid parking and help the business case for our own car parks, I fully support the restrictions on residential streets that are in the immediate proximity of these busy areas. The restrictions will take the pressure off our residential areas that are not supposed to be high turnover car park facilities. This is especially the case considering we are not requiring business developments to supply parking and therefore we are seeing ever-increasing parking shortfalls. In my eyes, it comes down to a choice about priorities. Do we want to ensure availability for visitors that could park in a car park or paid parking? Well, having the R code requirement keeps residents away and leaves more spots for visitors. Getting rid of the R code requirement can only assist in pushing that visitor demand to where we want it to be. It's more important than ever as we get ready for the intensification of Albany Highway over the coming years. Parking restrictions and permits together are what is required, now more than ever. Otherwise, our local residents become collateral damage and have no alternative but to treat their own home like a restaurant booking and be out the door and make way for the next person. Managed correctly, our residents and ratepayers who live in these 4P areas with parking permits could go about their lives like the rest of us and believe that is the only fair way. The officers have suggested to hold a workshop to explore the options available to make this policy work in its intended way. While I could endeavour to prescribe the rewording of a policy 351, that advice and expertise is available to us. By supporting this motion and hearing from the officers, hopefully that process will inform the policy review at a later date. Please support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamer. Councillor Melrosa, as the seconder, would you like to speak?
How could I beat such an impassioned plea? No. No, I don't.
I should comment simply because I don't know what the remainder of the debate is going to look like, but if this fails, then we will foreshadow that we will move the officer's recommendation. Is there anyone who would like to speak against this item? Or do you have a question, Councillor Cruiser? A question, Councillor Cruiser.
Just to clarify, the concept forum, is that intended to apply to the entire town or just to a discussion of the parking situation on Willis, Balmoral and Hampshire streets?
Councillor Hamer.
It's my intent that it be the entire town and density, different densities of the town also. Yeah.
Does that help, Councillor Cruiser? Is there anyone who would like to speak against this alternate? Councillor Cruiser.
I realise that the intent of this motion is specifically to look for a way that we can prioritise residential parking, particularly for people who live in single-family homes, on the street, which is essentially looking at ways to find space for people who already live in some of the most expensive real estate in the town to store their private property on the street. I think that the intent of this motion is not in any way, for example, to say, well, how can we ensure that people who are living in apartments can use their existing parking for storage units or community gardens or parklets or something like that, and then ensure that they can park on the street. And so being aware that our concept forums are already incredibly busy, incredibly booked up, having another concept forum where the whole intent is to just say, how can we look at giving over more of this incredibly valuable public space, which is what our streets are. They are valuable public space that there are many, many different needs for, in order to benefit people who are already some of the wealthiest people in terms of their own land, doesn't meet our climate action goals, doesn't support equity. We can have a conversation, but we already have a literally award-winning parking matrix to help us decide how we manage parking in the town. If we really want to rethink that literally award-winning, extensive document that has been developed with reference to all of our strategies, well, it doesn't hurt to have a conversation, but also that is time that we could be using to talk about progressing some of our other plans and strategies rather than revisiting an extensive plan that we have already looked at in great detail.
Thank you, Councillor Cruiser. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favour of this alternate? Is there anyone who would like to speak before we go to a vote? No. Councillor Hamer, would you like to close debate?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just say that we do have an award-winning policy, but we shouldn't rest on our laurels, and some things can be improved. So let's have that discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Hamer. If everyone could please vote, and this is, as I said, on Councillor Hamer's alternate. Thank you. Okay, I declare that carried. Those in favour, Councillor Anderson, Councillor Squint Miles, Councillor Devereux, Councillor Hamer and Councillor Minson, and those against, Councillor Melrose, Councillor Ife and Councillor Cruiser. So that alternative has been carried. Thank you very much, everybody, for that. Moving along, we have no committee reports. Item 16, applications for leave of absence. We have a recommendation that Council approves a leave of absence for Councillor Jessie Hamer for the date of 1 July 2025. I'm happy to move that. I'm going to let you go on holidays, Councillor Hamer. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Devereux will second that. Is there any dissent? Declare that carried unanimously. There you go, Councillor Hamer. 17, motion of which previous notice has been given. We have none. 18, questions from members without notice. Are there any members who would like to ask any questions? Councillor Devereux.
I just wanted to ask about the intersection of Planet and Mercury Street, because we've had a lot of community interest around that, and I just wanted to clarify what the current plans are for that intersection to deal with traffic concerns from the community and accidents.
Ms Adams, can you give us some assistance, please?
Thank you. Through the chair, I know we've been looking at it. Off the top of my head, I don't have an answer for you. There are a few intersections actually along both those streets that we are looking at. We're looking at the whole Carlisle area in that precinct. So I'll take it on notice. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions from elected members? Councillor Miles.
My neighbour requested that I ask, but I also have had conversation with a couple of people about the bulk waste. Just the leftover glass, if there's a plan. So there's a few places where the glass has been left intact, but there's also a lot of places where there's now broken glass in the street, in the verges. And I just wondered if there was a plan for remediating it.
Ms Adams.
Thank you. So through the chair, we the town and town staff are going back through areas that have not been collected. So any of those materials that were not approved is being collected by town staff, and then we'll take care of that disposal as well through approved contractors. So aside from the normal bulk verge collection materials, which there have been some missed ones, which we're going back through. The mattresses will be collected by a separate contractor, but the glass specifically will be handled with town staff.
Thank you. Any further questions? Oh, they've both got another one. Councillor Devereux.
Just following up on that issue of glass after the bulk waste, can I ask if there is any common practice of tackling the waste glass, broken glass that is on the cycle path on the edge of the roads after the bulk waste? Because I'm certainly encountering a lot of it. And I just wonder if there's any systematic way that the town tackles that, or whether it relies on individual people on the roads putting in a request for the clean-up. Thank you.
Ms Adams.
Thank you. So through the chair, it's probably a combination of any CRMs that are provided to the town. There's also when our staff are doing the road sweeping, footpath sweeping and the like, or in the area, if it comes to our attention, we do clean it up. There has been, like I was saying, a lot of unauthorised materials. People are not meant to be putting glass out there or any other dumping of glass on verges because it is a hazardous material. So the other way that we do deal with it, like in normal circumstances, is we would normally have the rangers have a look at it as well and treat it as perhaps as part of the illegal dumping that we have. But we haven't done that, to my knowledge, for the recent collection, given that there was just so much. So, yeah, so there are a number of ways we do deal with it, but the one that is there now, if you do see it, it'd be helpful if you could advise, just so we can make sure that we definitely do pick it up.
Okay, it's going to be a long list. Thank you.
Get to it, Councillor Devereux. Councillor Miles, did you have an additional question? I thought your hand went up again. Any other questions? Nope. All right, moving on now. There is no new business of an urgent nature introduced by the decision of meeting. I will now open public question time at 8:36 p.m. Same rules apply. You can have 3 questions. Are there any members of the gallery who would like to ask questions this evening? No, I will close public question time at 8:36 p.m. and public statement time. Again, same rules apply. You can have a 2-minute statement. I will open public statement time at 8:36 p.m. Anyone who'd like to make a public statement? No, I will close public statement time at 8:36 p.m. We have no matters for which the meeting may be closed, and therefore at 8:37 p.m. I would like to declare this meeting closed. Thank you very much for those who joined us online. Thank you, Councillor Minson, for joining us from your remote work, and good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors, staff, members of the public. Please be upstanding for Deputy Mayor Bronwyn-Ife. Thank you.